Hi, everyone. I'm Chengwei Liu, Associate Professor of Strategy and Behavioral Science at the ESMT Berlin. Welcome joining this video where I will be introducing my research on luck. So exceptional successes attract our attention. And some people believe that the successes have nothing to do with luck. It's all about their skill and effort. And of course, some others believe that they make their own luck. And this answer to this question is have a huge implication for business and society, isn't it? If you believe successes are a matter of skill and effort, then of course, managers should reward the most successful. And also this has implication for our society because the inequality, if the most successful is all about their skill, talent, and foresight, then their huge wealth can be justified. They deserve to have all this exceptional wealth compared to the rest, isn't it? So before we reach that conclusion, let's examine when we should attribute exceptional successes to skill and when to luck. And let's start this discussion with a quiz. So now you have two observations. On the one hand, you have New England Patriots. What they achieved in season 2007 is they won 100% of the game in that season. On the other hand, we have Chicago Bulls. What they achieved in 95-96 season is they won almost 88% of the game in that season. So if I ask you, which performance is more impressive? Both are pretty exceptional, but which one is more impressive? So of course, if we're in a class, then of course I would love to learn your response. But let me show you in other classes I taught, what are the responses from those students? So here's the distribution. So among 416 students, MBA and EMBA students I taught in the past 10 years, there's almost 20 cohorts from Warwick University and also Boston University. So the majority went for the perfect performance. So they thought the 100% winning rate by the New England Patriots, they're more impressive. 69% of them went for that. And then there's a minority went for Chicago Bulls. But there's always one or two students, they raise their hand and they say to me, Professor, why are you asking this misleading question? Why am I comparing apple with orange? So many of you probably also realize now that New England Patriots, they're from NFL, National Football League, American football, whereas the Chicago Bulls, they're in NBA, National Basketball Association. So why am I comparing the two? Well, first of all, let's consider that's usually what happens in reality, isn't it? So if you look at the top performing firms, the top CEO, usually all this magazine, business media mix all these firms and CEO from different industry and then rank them. And then of course, presumably the top performing one among them are our role model. But still, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, the response or the challenge from the student, right? So probably this is a misleading question. We should have separated all this context. We should have separated all these industries. But my earlier research published in PNAS suggests, well, under some circumstances, if you're forced to answer or pick one of the two to be the more impressive one, there's a rationale to pick the less impressive one, the less than perfect performance by the Chicago Bulls. Actually, they may be more impressive according to the finding of my paper. So the reason in this particular case is pretty straightforward. Exceptional performance tend to occur in exceptional circumstances. So this is really kind of opposite to the usual inference people have. So psychology has found this outcome bias to be very, very strong. So when people observe like successes, then people over-attribute the successes to the person involved and rather than to the situation. But here, I try to say something opposite to that, in the sense that whenever you observe exceptional performances in modern society in particular, you should think about, well, this is probably too good to be true. Probably that's the circumstances, the situation that is really exceptional and enable this type of outliers to be produced. And this particular example is interesting because there's a very straightforward reason why the exceptional performance, the perfect performance, is too good to be true. In this case, there's only 16 games to play in a season in NFL compared to 82 games to play in NBA. So the principle in statistics that tell us that when you have a much smaller sample size and you compute the averages, then extreme value are much more likely to be observed when you have a small sample size. And this is the case for New England Patriot or NFL compared to NBA. And this actually have important implication for prediction whenever you consider luck and link this idea to regression to the mean. So let me elaborate. So let's consider what can we learn from past performance, like performance at period T, so that we can predict what's going to happen in the future, say period T plus 1. So if luck plays no role, meaning that past performance is a perfectly reliable indicator for predicting the future, then also you should not observe any regression to the mean. If you observe in the past, like someone achieved perfect performance, then this association, effectively a 45-degree line, should be your inference. Then you observe 100% winning rate in the past, you should predict the same actor to achieve the equally perfect performance in the future, also 100% winning rate. And of course, if you have a very low performance, almost zero, that should continue as well, because luck plays no role. No noise, no randomness, scale is the only determinant of performance, and that should persist, isn't it? But of course, in most natural occurring situation, that is probably not the case. And also the other extremes should not be observed either, right? So if you consider there's a situation where luck dominates the performance, like tossing a coin or rolling a dice, that there's no skill really can be involved. Then, of course, this association probably will be the case, right? That will be implying extreme regression to the mean. No matter what you observe, no matter what you observe in the past, like performance at period T, it tells you nothing about the future. You should always regress to the mean value. Take rolling the die, for example. All the possible outcomes, we have 6 possible outcomes, isn't it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So whatever you observe in the past, it tells you nothing about the future. And you should regress to the mean value, in this case is around 3.5, if you have to predict. But of course, in most situations, we're somewhere in between, isn't it? So this will be the flat line here, flatter than the 45-degree line, but steeper than the flat line we just discussed. So if you observe a very high performance, like 100% winning rate, it will regress downward to the mean to, say, around 75%. So more extreme performance you observe now will be followed by less extreme performance. That's the idea about regression to the mean. Because when you observe this very high performance successes, it probably indicates the actors involved, they're good. Superior merit, superior skill, for example, but also indicate, wow, there's a lot of luck and being at the right place at the right time. By definition, luck is not that persistent, so the future performance will be less extreme compared to the current performance. And also, if you observe very low performance, then it suggests that the future performance will be, well, steeper or regressing upward to the mean also. So the interesting finding from my earlier research, this PNAS article, is that, well, probably this regression to the mean effect can differ dramatically, particularly for the extreme, the outliers. So the regression to the mean effect probably will be the strongest if this outlier, they're more sensitive to being at the right place at the right time compared to others. And this can generate what we call a less is more effect, or you can call it rank reversal. So the top performer, they're no longer the best in the future, and they're worse than, say, the second best. And in this particular example, the excellent performance of the New England Patriot and also the Chicago Bulls, their performance, both regress downward to the mean. But the less reliable one, the New England Patriot one, they regress downward to the mean, much more so than Chicago Bulls. And of course, this example is anecdotal. It's just from professional sport. If you know sport or know both sports, you probably have a lot of alternative explanation why New England Patriots perform much worse in the following year. So my current research actually goes beyond that. So I try to collect a lot of data. It may not have the big sales scale, big data scale yet, but at least it's non-small data from like entertainment, billboard, movie box office, and the innovation or in science like citation and patent citation, auto racing if you're interested in Formula One or NASCAR, and also film performance. But today we're going to have time to focus only on one data set. But before we do that, what is the motivation to study this less is more effect or regression to the mean? Well, this is related to another research of mine published recently, because if you really think about this less is more effect, it is pretty counterintuitive. Top performers, we tend to assume they must have done something right. That's almost like hardwired in our cognition. For our ancestor, usually this is correct. The best hunter and gatherer in the tribe, they're probably the most skilled. So everyone should really learn from them. But in modern society, we have a lot of other mechanisms present, and that can kind of boost this impact of luck to such an extent that this generate this rank reversal or less is more effect, that people just don't get it. But whenever people don't get it, actually, this may be opportunity for you, because they suggest that, well, false expectation or mispricing of resources may happen, and that imply opportunity for you. So we will revisit the example at the end. How do you translate the finding we just saw from sport into money? So hold for a minute for that insight. So billboard, that will be the data we focus on today. So the analysis of this billboard data, which is based between 1980 to 2008, is identical to the framework I just introduced. So you have past performance on this x-axis. So for the same actor, the same musician, their past performance is the best rank they achieve for their current single. And they will want to use this predictor to predict what's going to happen for their next single. What is the average rank, the highest rank their next single can achieve, and how they associate with their current performance. So now let's pause for a minute for you to think about it. What should be the association should look like? If you believe that talent is the only factor that matters in this industry and luck plays no role, then of course you should probably suggest or predict there should be a 45-degree line, right? A top one single for a musician, his or her next single should be top one as well. And if you believe, in contrast, this industry is totally dominated by being at the right place at the right time, then a flat line. Or somewhere in between, if you believe both play an important role, isn't it? And also importantly, should we expect a less is more effect? Meaning that, well, the exceptional performers, in this case, probably the top 5 or top 10, their future performance may regress much more downward to the mean than the second best. What do you think? So let me show you the data, and this is the result. So I think if you believe that you should be closer to the flat line, in a way, you're right. So luck actually plays a very important role in this industry. So it's much flatter than the 45-degree line, isn't it? If you compare this to the 45-degree line, it's much flatter than the 45-degree line, but still positive, meaning that there's some performance persistency, which you should attribute that to talent, skill, and so on and so forth. But regression to the mean is still very, very strong. If you consider like the top 3, this is the observation. Then on average, their next single just slightly above average, above 50, right? This is reverse scale, so around 40, actually just slightly above the mediocre 50. So regress downward to the mean dramatically. So it appears there's some flattening, if not negative here. So I have done the analysis for you. So actually, in this case, we do find this less is more effect. So higher performance indicate higher future performance for this range up to around 22. The cutoff is about 22. But above 22, something else happened. So the higher your current performance, the music single rank, the lower your future performance. The association actually become negative. How could this happen? Current success actually indicate lower future performance, and it's actually worse than the second best. So let me give you a hint. I hope this example is pretty straightforward, that everyone kind of recognize this is Psy from Korea, and his top one single was Gangnam Style. I don't need to do the dance to remind you what that is, right? And this is a good example suggesting what does it take for a single to become #1 or top 3 in Billboard, in the music industry. In this case, it suggests that there must something going on. People call it like the virus spread or runaway process, that they happen to kind of hit this kind of threshold or whatever, and then everyone is talking about it and everyone is sharing it to such extent that become the top 3 single from nowhere. But the important thing here is that should we attribute this runaway process, the creation of it, to their talent and preparation, or to being at the right place at the right time? And this analysis suggests that, well, if it's a matter of your foresight, skill, effort, and so on and so forth, then you should be able to have an equally high performance in the future, right? Probably regression downward to the mean, but not so much. But here, the negative slope suggests that, well, this is probably the danger zone, or this performance above 22 is the danger zone. It probably suggests that the impact of luck is so great that overwhelm the factor of the skill, merit, and quality to such extent that the regression downward to the mean is so strong. And the highest expected future performance actually associated with the second best, around 22. Now, let's consider a different union analysis. So the same data set. So the last slide, we focus on the musician, the artist. And now let's think about the firm behind them, who have the budget and resources to, well, invest on some of their musicians. Again, the question is the same. For the record label, their current single, and what can we learn from that to help predict what's their average highest rank to be achieved in their next single? Is it like 45-degree line, flat, or positive, but less is more effect present? Think about it and how that can differ compared to the musician union analysis we just saw. Here's the result. So as you can see, it's pretty different compared to the musician union analysis, isn't it? In the sense that, first of all, for this normal range of performance up to about 20 or 17 actually, say 17, higher performance indicate higher future performance. And it's very close, much closer to the 45-degree line, suggesting that this talent and the preparedness, investment make a huge difference in this industry. However, for the top performance, wow, it's really a matter of being at the right place at the right time for this music label, isn't it? So they may have this kind of top performances, but that's really unpersistent. They cannot really replicate their successes, meaning that here is the danger zone for the music label in this industry. For normal performance, they may be able to buy the airtime and marketing this single really heavily so that they can have a decent performance. But for the top performance, it's a different story. It's a danger zone dominating by luck, if you like. So to conclude, this analysis actually suggests a very interesting thing we can do with data and with the idea about regression to the mean. First of all, you can actually identify this very impact of luck. So of course, regression to the mean happen in all this context, so luck actually plays a role, but this analysis show you the danger zone. Which area of the performance in your own context, for example, has the greatest impact of luck? And that should be associated with the strongest regression to the mean, isn't it? And this analysis can be easily done as long as you can collect data from the current performance and the future performance. Then you can have an idea about how influential luck is. But they also suggest something related or associated with the second best, isn't it? So this is a hidden gems idea. So their less than perfect performance currently actually associated with the highest future performance. But they're likely to be ignored or at least undervalued by others, because a lot of music label, they probably will try to sign with the top performer, those top 5, if not top 10. And on one hand, we have the winner's curse. Usually you are likely to overestimate them and pay more. But here we suggest that, well, actually there's a better resource, the second best, and the informed strategists like you should pursue. You can actually acquire them using a price lower than their actual contribution. So good for you. So let's come back to the insight I promised to share. How do you make money out of the professional sport data I showed you in the beginning between New England Patriots and Chicago Bulls? So I downloaded the data from NFL and also NBA, and then did exactly the same analysis: past performance, winning percentage, and future winning percentage, and what the association looked like. Not surprisingly, the less reliable one, the NFL, their association appeared to have this less is more effect. The best performance, like New England Patriots, their regressing downward effect is much stronger than otherwise. How do you translate this finding into profit, into money? So here's the investment simulated portfolio I did for you. The hint is the sport betting data. So here are the outliers. So here are the NFL team that managed to win at least 15 games out of 16 in the past 40 years, okay? So given what we saw, this less is more effect, well, here's a strategy help you to translate this into money. The tip is, well, you can bet on the salient winners, the game in the next season, but only the first one to lose. 73% here means that if you invest $1, you get 1.73 back. Not too bad, isn't it? And the important thing is only the first game. Well, this is not surprising in hindsight, isn't it? Because the second and third game onward, actually a lot of this better actually study this team very carefully, so they understand this and they can predict much more reliably. But not necessarily for the first game, where there's a lot of uncertainty and ambiguity of the new team composition and strategy, isn't it? So they may anchor on the salient performance from the last season. And this is where they can translate this into opportunity. This overestimation become your opportunity. But here is something even better. So if you identify this salient loser in this sport, and we also saw this less is more effect on the bottom performance, isn't it? So if you identify in this sport, those teams that won actually fewer than 5 games out of 16 in 1 year, you should bet this loser's first game in the next season to win, and the return is even higher. And this actually also suggests a very interesting asymmetry for you to explore. So the way we underestimate the underdog, those losers, is much greater than the way we overestimate the winners. So this asymmetry actually also suggests that the hidden gems usually are associated with the underdogs, that very few people pay attention to them, and this is exactly where you can translate that into your profit more reliably. So to conclude, so in the beginning, we talk about a lot of people believe that luck doesn't really matter in successes, and people make their own luck, chance, favor the prepared mind, isn't it? Actually, I have to say, I totally agree with them, as long as we're talking about performance in the normal range. Like if you're talking about performance in normal range, obviously skill and effort, greed, all this matters a lot if you move from poor to good. However, if we're talking about this from good to great, being at the right place at the right time, they may overwhelm the merit factor or the skill factor to such an extent that, well, this top performer, actually they are systematically worse. And this is where all this conventional wisdom of luck, like chance favor, prepare mind, work harder, you get luck here, doesn't really make sense. Here is where the unconventional wisdom of luck, that we should ignore the top and focus on the second best, make more sense. But shifting this focus from the top to the second best is really challenging, right? So we talk about we may be hardwired to think this top performer, they are the great, they're the greatest. And of course, you'll continue seeing publication or bestseller like this. They try to identify these top performers and analyze what they did and sell us as the best practices we should learn from. But unfortunately, if you follow the firms that are featuring this bestseller, this book included, well, unfortunately, well, 1/3 of them went bankrupted within 5 years of the publication, and the rest, usually they perform below the benchmark. So what happened after becoming great is rarely continued greatness, but regressing downward to the mean, if not fail altogether. So focusing on this outlier is really challenging. So someone should probably write a book like this. But if I'm going to write a book like this, even you recognize the message or the implication is totally constructed and make more sense. Are you going to buy a copy? Probably this will be very challenging and difficult to persuade others, isn't it? But having said that, I do have a book on this topic if you want to know more about the topic of luck. So this is my recently published book on how do you kind of conceptualize luck, also quantify how to quantify luck and how to strategize with luck. And billboard data is just one of the illustration. I also cover other areas as one of the slides show. And so thank you for your time today, and I hope you enjoy this mini presentation on this topic on luck. And feel free to send me your question or comment if you have any. Thank you very much.